Hello, this is the Abbot of the Space Anchor of Logic coming to you on stardate 11911.23. Today, I will discuss three different scientific news articles or items and their respective papers, and how these documents were in fact predicted by our scripture, the way of logic. Remember that our scripture, the way of logic, was released and distributed in the first month of this year, 2019. So well before these news items were even news items to begin with. Let us start with a scientific paper titled, quote, Assessment of Jugular Venous Blood Flow Stasis and Thrombosis During Spaceflight, unquote. Dated stardate 11911.13. This paper, which was distributed by NASA's JAMA Network Open, concludes that humans suffer from blood clots and abnormal blood flows in space that are life-threatening to a degree that NASA was not aware of before. So, what did our scripture, the way of logic, predict about these new findings? I want to read a quote from the way of logic that is relevant to this subject. Quote, Stephen Hawking realized that because humanity was incapable of traveling to the stars as the environment in space was too harsh for our frail species, humankind was more likely to evolve into another more robust life form than to develop the technology necessary to successfully explore the cosmos, unquote. So, our scripture predicted that the human body was indeed not built for life in space, and especially not built for life in degraded gravity conditions of less than 1g, as underlined by this new paper from NASA. I want to go on now to a second document or a second news item, and this is an article titled, quote, A no-brainer. Hungarian scientists may have found a fifth force of nature, unquote. Dated stardate 11911.23. Distributed by CNN.com. This article suggests that a fifth force may have indeed been discovered by these Hungarian scientists, and that it may be photophobic, meaning that it avoids contact with light. This would be entirely consistent with the predictions in the way of logic, which would place this fifth force and dark matter, like gravity, for example, at the mass pole as opposed to the energy pole in that system. And remember that in the system as described in our scripture, the way of logic, light is normally to be found at the energy pole. Lastly, in a paper titled, quote, Planck Evidence for a Closed Universe and a Possible Crisis for Cosmology, unquote, with a star date of 11911.04. And I wish to also add that an article at livescience.com titled, quote, The Universe Might Be a Giant Loop, unquote, actually contains a link to the scientific paper. In any case, our scripture, the way of logic, predicted that the universe is indeed a closed system, as opposed to an open system, which is pretty much the commonly held position in cosmology. So, these new findings and data contained in this scientific paper and the theory that is developing around this data would be consistent with what the way of logic predicted. I want to leave you today with a quote for meditation from the way of logic. Quote, to gain knowledge is to decrease entropy. Measurements are knowledge. Unquote. Logic above all else.